The preceding videos lead quite naturally to the question of the meaning of words. More particularly, if a word or a sentence can mean so many different things, what do we mean when we say a word means something? And can we ever be sure that we've understood the right meaning in any context? These are good questions, which through history have fostered a lot of discussion. Keep them in the back of your mind as you watch these videos and see how you yourself answer them at the end. For the time being, though, we'll continue our exploration of communication by making a few observations regarding words and how we use them. In video 3, we observed that even words and sentences that are fairly ambiguous exclude far more inferences than they allow, so that, for example, if someone uses the word key, we might erroneously infer that they mean a piano key, when in fact they mean a sheet with answers to a test. But we would not infer that they mean a hat, or a pencil, or a sneaker, or a million other things. The fact is, though, that some words exclude far more inferences than others. Think, for example, of the word thing. If I say, the thing is in the trunk, what might I mean by thing? Well, I might mean airplane, or telephone, or beaver, or bolt, or hat, or collie, or any of a million other possibilities. The word thing excludes very little from consideration. If, however, I say that there is an animal in the trunk, the likely inferences are reduced dramatically. I can reduce them even further by substituting dog for animal, and even further by substituting collie for dog. There are a couple of things to notice about this. The first is that, just as one word can refer to more than one kind of thing, one thing can be referred to by more than one word. For example, if someone came into the room asking if I had seen their dog, which just happened to be a collie, I could answer with any of these sentences, and they could infer that I was telling them the location of the dog they were looking for, because the pet in question is simultaneously an animal, a dog, and a collie. We do this kind of thing with language so frequently that we take for granted the power and flexibility it gives us when expressing ideas. We'll see more examples of this as we move through this series. As we do, contemplate what would be lost if things could only be referred to by one and only one word. The second thing to notice is how the meanings of collie, dog, animal, and thing are related. We can say that all animals are things, but only some things are animals. And all dogs are animals, but only some animals are dogs. That all collies are dogs, but only some dogs are collies. To put it another way, we can say that animals are a category of things, and dogs are a category of animals, and collies are a category of dogs. Because a collie belongs to the category labeled dog, it also belongs to the category labeled animal. When we use a word to designate something, it is like we are saying that the thing we designate is a member of the category for which that word is a label. Since collie belongs to all of these categories, we can use any of these words to designate a collie and have a reasonable expectation that, in the right context, the person we are talking to will infer the meaning we intend. Categories that contain lots of members do so because it doesn't take very much to belong to them. Members of larger categories generally only have a few things in common. What features do the things we can refer to as things have to qualify as things? How about the things we call animals, and the animals we call dogs, and the dogs we call collies? For categories to fit completely within other categories, as these do, they need to share all the features of the larger category they are part of, plus other features that make them a subcategory. In general, terms that can refer to lots of things are said to be more generic, and terms that can refer to fewer things are more specific. The things that more generic terms can refer to generally have fewer defining features than the things that more specific terms refer to. That we can talk about things using the labels of categories allows us to treat collections of diverse things as though they were one object. For example, suppose you misplaced your hammer and saw and pliers and screwdriver and wrench, and you want to ask someone about them. Instead of having to say, "Have you seen my hammer and saw and pliers and screwdriver and wrench?" you can just say, "Have you seen my tools?" And instead of having to say, the horse and the cow and the sheep and the pig and the rooster are in the barn, you can say, the animals are in the barn. Using labels that group together diverse objects not only saves time when we talk, but permits us to think in abstract ways that help us manage living in a complex world. Another very useful thing about categories is that they allow us to use words that we already know to designate items that we encounter for the first time. If this were not the case, every time we walked into a new friend's kitchen, we would have to learn new words for the stove and the fridge and the microwave we saw there. The fact that we can use labels we already know for a diverse range of things that share a sufficient number of features greatly reduces the size of the vocabulary we need to talk about everything. Another trick we frequently do with categories is to extend their boundaries a little to refer to things and ideas that really are new, and not just new to us. For example, when someone invented this thing that we use to control the cursor on our computer, we didn't end up calling it a fidget or a bruck, words that have no other meaning and would have been perfectly unambiguous. But instead we called it a mouse. Why? Well, mouse is a word we already know, and this thing kind of looks like a mouse, and the contexts where the two meanings might get mixed up are actually pretty rare. We did the same thing when glasses were invented, and did it again when railroads came around. Why? Well, in spite of the potential ambiguity this strategy creates, it appears to be easier than coining new strings of sounds for every new thing. Not only does the ability to refer to the same thing with more than one label allow us to treat collections of diverse things as one object, it allows us to perform diverse communicative tasks simultaneously. Consider, for example, these 4 sentences. My car is parked by the curb. My old jalopy is parked by the curb. My rust bucket is parked by the curb. My sweet ride is parked by the curb. If you don't know what my car looks like, these sentences each evoke a different image in your mind. Using the word car in the first sentence might evoke a thought of whatever kind of car you might associate with the kind of person you perceive me to be. Using the phrase old jalopy in the second sentence, however, evokes something different, probably an older model in less than top condition. Rust bucket evokes yet a different image, something in even worse shape, while sweet ride suggests something nicer. Note that the term car here is more generic, and the other terms are more specific. For example, all jalopies are cars, but not all cars are jalopies, and all cars are certainly not sweet rides. An interesting thing, though, is that I can use any of these terms to refer to my car, regardless of its condition. Even if my car is a standard, run-of-the-mill, almost new sedan, I can refer to it not only as my car, but also as my old jalopy, my sweet ride, or my rust bucket. When I do this, these terms serve both the function of designating the vehicle I own and drive, and the function of letting you know my opinion of that vehicle. We use words in this way to simultaneously point things out and express our opinion of them almost constantly, especially when we're talking about other people. Another advantage to using words is that they allow us to introduce ideas that the people receiving our messages would not infer by relying solely on the situational, relational, cultural, or worldview contexts. One way we do this is through describing new things in terms of old things. We can introduce ideas and concepts that are unknown to the recipients of our message by describing them in terms of ideas and concepts that they already know. So, for example, if we use the word cheeseburger in a conversation with our friends and they don't know what a cheeseburger is, we can explain it to them by associating cheese and hamburgers, 2 concepts that we believe they are already familiar with. This strategy will be most successful if they've had intimate experience with the old concepts we are using to introduce the new one, and it will help them identify a cheeseburger if they ever meet one. But even so, it falls a little short of experiencing the real thing. Explaining what a zebra is would be a bit more of a stretch, and our explanation probably will leave our friend with a fuzzier understanding of zebra than our explanation of cheeseburger left them with an understanding of cheeseburger, because real zebras and the context they appear in are more complex and further from our friend's everyday experience than are the things that make up cheeseburger. Language not only enables us to introduce new things and ideas into an interpretive context, it also allows us to introduce alternative information about old ideas. This is an astonishingly powerful thing and makes plans, promises, lies, and politics all possible. Finally, language is designed to efficiently express relationships between people, things, and events in time and space. One tool for doing this is the use of a special set of words. So far, the words we've looked at, like key and trunk and dog, point to things in the real or imaginary world. One way to think about the meanings of these words is by considering the things or ideas or events that these words point to. But what do words like in and on and or point to in the world? And if they don't point to things, how can they mean anything? To think about this, let's go back to our infamous sentence, "The key is in the trunk." If we change in to on, what changes? The objects in the scene are all still the same. What has changed is their relationship in space. What if we change is to was? Still the same objects, still the same spatial relationships. What has changed is the time frame of the scene we are talking about relative to the person who is sending the message. Another tool we have for indicating relationships doesn't involve adding special words, but simply changing the order of the words that we're using. Consider a message containing these words. What does it mean? It could mean a lot of things depending on the order in which the words are said and the intonation used. Now let's use these words to make these two sentences. They both contain exactly the same words, but the words are in a different order. What difference does that make to the meaning of the message? One of the tasks English uses word order to accomplish is to indicate who is doing the doing and who is getting done to. In the first sentence, Zeke is the first element in the sentence, which indicates that he's the one who did the calling and that Ted was the one getting called. In the second sentence, it's Ted that did the calling, which we know because of where Ted comes in the sentence. In these sentences, Ted and Zeke are like participants in a play with different roles. In English, the order in which words occur in a sentence is one way we assign different roles to different participants. There is one more way that languages indicate relationships in time and space, and that is through tweaking the forms of the words that point to external reality. A very common way to do this is to add bits to words in the form of prefixes and suffixes. In these examples, the time frame of the event is shifted by putting different suffixes on the verb call. To shift it into the future, we need to drop the suffixes and add one of those special grammatical words. These tweaks to word forms, changes in word order, and the use of those special words we throw in to show relationships of the words that point to the things in the world, combined with the meaning that they contribute to messages when they are used, is called grammar. The fact that we use words makes grammar possible, and grammar is what allows us to indicate relationships between the things we're talking about. It allows us to indicate what roles participants are playing and how things and events are related in space and time. Grammar allows us to show many more relationships as well. So to recap, we've just seen 5 advantages to using words to communicate. First, using words allows us to limit the number of possible inferences other people have to choose between when trying to figure out what we're trying to express to them. Second, words enable us to create categories that allow us to refer to different things with a single term. Third, words allow us to introduce ideas that the people we are talking with would not have thought of based solely on their understanding of the immediate context. Fourth, words allow us to simultaneously convey both facts about the world and our opinion of those facts. And fifth, through grammar, words allow us to convey information about the relationship in time and space of the people, things, and events we're talking about. In our next video, number 5, we'll take a closer look at categories.